Okay friends, one of the first things we need to do to get started is to safely raise and support the truck so the front wheel is off the ground. After that, go ahead and remove this center cover, and then we'll remove our 6 lug nuts. Let's get the wheel off of here. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, let's go ahead and put one of these lug nuts on so it's going to hold the rotor from moving around. So now that we have that situated, we want to take a nice clear look at our tie rod end system here. This area in the center is considered an adjustment sleeve. To remove the adjustment sleeve, you would of course want to loosen up the nut right here and right there by holding the bolt from the backside and then loosen it. After that, you can continue on by making your adjustments. Before you go ahead and start doing anything like that though, it's a good idea to grab yourself a tape measure. And we're going to essentially go right from along the lip of that sleeve, right along here, and then I'm going to come all the way down the tie rod end to where the very end is. For me, it looks as though I'm at approximately 6.5 inches, so I'm going to take a quick note of that, and then we'll continue. You would want to do the same process for both sides, including the inner tie rod end. Now, before I start disconnecting my tie rod stud nuts, generally I prefer to remove the adjustment point right in the center. Okay, so we've got both of our bolts out of there, and now at this point we've already taken our measurement and we have this loose. Let's continue on by grabbing this with some nice long pliers, and I'm just going to go ahead and try to break this free. You might need to use a little bit of penetrant. You can go here, here, and if you were to feel along on this, you're also going to feel a line that comes across. You can fill that with some penetrant as well. Okay. So that's moving for us. So now at this point, I'm going to leave this just as it is, and I'll continue on to removing my outer tie rod end nut. Get that locking cotter pin out of the way. Let's get that nut off of there. All right, so the next thing we need to do is go ahead and just take that nut, and we're going to slide it on here just a little bit. At this point, we're going to continue on with a nice hammer, and we're going to give the knuckle a couple loving bonks. Now that the outer tie rod end's out of the knuckle, we're going to continue on by de-adjusting the sleeve. I'm going to turn this clockwise, and that's going to continue on by de-adjusting these. There it is, friends. Now it's going to be time to go ahead and put on our sleeve and our brand new outer tie rod end. Now before we go ahead and put on our sleeve, let's go ahead and put a little bit of copper never seize on the threads of both of our tie rod ends. Now this part's super important. You want to make sure that when you're putting on your adjustment sleeve, you're going to be properly timing your tie rod ends. What I mean by that is you want to take the sleeve, put it onto both the tie rod ends just a little bit, and then we're going to continue on tightening this sleeve to draw in both tie rod ends at the same time. Okay, so now we've got that, so we're pretty close. Let's continue on with retaking our measurement. We want to see if we're as close as possible to that original mark that we were at. For me personally, I was at approximately 6.5 inches from the very end of this tie rod end, so that essentially means that I just need to go in a little bit more. Of course, I'm going to do the check on the other side to make sure that I'm as close as possible over there as well. A couple things that I want to mention real quick when we're making our initial adjustments is when it comes time to stop, it would be best if I can stop with this area right here, or the slotted area, not facing up in this direction. The reason for that is because we don't want water getting inside there or even debris, and of course rotting out the threaded area of our tie rod ends. And aside from that, once you do have your adjustment as close as possible, and hopefully this is at least facing down, if not towards the rear, of course the adjustment's the adjustment, it's going to end where it ends. Essentially when you do this, you want to make sure that when you do tighten it, you don't line up this area right here with this area along here, okay? Essentially you want to at least have it like that, if not in the complete opposite direction. That way there it's going to keep the most amount of pressure holding this tight, and it's not going to be at the weakest link, which is this bolt. Now let's go ahead and put our outer tie rod end back into the knuckle here. Put on your outer tie rod end nut, snug it up, and then torque it to 40 foot-pounds. Essentially, once you have your nut so that it's torqued, you want to continue tightening your castle nut until the very next slot/hole lines up. Once it does, continue on by putting your cotter pin in there, and then of course peen it over so that there's no way that it can come loose. So now once you have your adjustment where you need it to be and you have your clamps lined up, so they're definitely not lined up with that line that's supposed to be there, let's continue on by snugging these up, and then we're going to go ahead and torque them to 14 foot-pounds. There we are. Now let's do the same to the other one. Let's go ahead and get that lug nut off of there. Reinstall your wheel, snug up all of your lug nuts, and then torque them to 140 foot-pounds. Put on your center cover. Okay friends, now all you have to do is safely take your vehicle down to your local alignment shop.